the former President Jacob Zuma's rescission application has been dismissed in a majority finding of the Constitutional Court. Zuma was sent to jail for 15 months by the Apex Court for contempt of court after he violated the court's order and refused to appear at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. He later filed a rescission application asking the court to review its decision. Advocate Modidima Mannya joins us now to look at the elements that informed the court's ruling. Advocate, a very warm welcome to your Daytime Update and thank you for your time. We have been analyzing various aspects of this ruling by the Constitutional Court. In all fairness, could the Constitutional Court have been expected to review its own decision? Are there any merits that could have been put forward by the applicants that could have given a different outcome to what we saw mapping out today?
Yes, good day and good day to your viewers. Maybe let me preface this by saying that the Constitutional Court itself has asserted the fact that its own orders and judgments are open to rescission or to be varied if a case is made out for that. So that certainty now obtained, so there's no longer confusion about what can happen to Constitutional Court judgments. Secondly, the court has made it very clear that its judgments and orders are immune to appeal. So you can't appeal, because I think there's been some confusion about where do I go, because in this matter there was also an issue of whether Mr. Zuma's right of appeal has been violated or not. And having said that, in the current circumstances, what the court has found is that former President Zuma has not made a case. In fact, the court used some quite rebukive language and said that there were creative attempts to have the order set aside. So they were saying, like the High Court said in Pietermaritzburg, that this was some sort of creativity to try and create what doesn't exist. So in real terms, they are saying it would never happen. I think I'm one of those who said from the outset that I'm very skeptical about the prospects of success to have a rescission of these judgments. And I think one of the things that is important is what the court has now clarified, that when you talk about absent, it does not necessarily mean talking about the lack of physical presence. It means a decision or election not to participate in the legal proceedings.
Former President Jacob Zuma is currently out on a medical parole. What impact then would this Constitutional Court ruling have had? Could it have changed the fact that he is actually out on parole?
Yes, I think the one important thing to clarify is that a person who is on parole remains a ward of the Department of Correctional Services. So the difference is that he's serving his sentence or continue to serve his sentence from home, but the sentence remains. If, for instance, former President Zuma were to breach any of the conditions of his release, he will be taken back to prison. If, for instance, the parties that are taking the medical parole to court succeed, he will go back to prison. So it doesn't have an impact on his incarceration.
So can this then have a bearing on the court cases for the suspension of the medical parole that former President Jacob Zuma is currently on? As you are aware, various parties are trying to get him back in prison.
Not at all. In this particular instance, what the court was dealing with was a rescission application of an order it has made that he must be committed to imprisonment for contempt of its order. The decision on medical parole was taken by the Commissioner for Correctional Services based on a wholly different set of circumstances. What the parties will do is to approach a court with an application to review and set aside the decision of the Commissioner of Correctional Services. So this judgment doesn't have an impact on that. It would have an impact if the court rescinded its order, which means that the order for committal to imprisonment would have fallen off, so we wouldn't even have any debate about the question of medical parole because it would have fallen off with the imprisonment itself.
So this was an important ruling as far as where to from here regarding this contempt of the Deputy Chief Justice Commission of Inquiry. But what impact does this have then on the law in South Africa? What type of precedents does this ruling set? And indeed, not only the ruling, but the entire process that we've seen unfolding.
Well, a very interesting one, because I think this judgment, clarifies a number of issues. But it also, I think the court was very clear, as it said in its finding of in the contempt application, that it seeks to vindicate its authority, which is a constitutional imperative. And the court has said repeatedly, even in this judgment, that it will not allow people to decide when to obey its orders. That's the first important thing. The second important thing is that it has made it clear that regardless of who you are, the law will apply evenly. I mean, the former President Zuma is no ordinary person. He's a former head of state. He wields considerable public influence. He's got quite a substantial number of followers. But here he is. The court, like it would do to me, it would do to you, has imprisoned him for 15 months. But secondly, which is very important and probably disturbing at the same time, is that we see that there are still two judgments. The judgments of the minority, which is Justice Theron and a colleague, and the majority of the court. But one thing that has come out, firstly, it shows that our judges individually are wholly independent. So they're not going to say what the other judge wants to hear. But I think something that was said by the majority, which is a bit concerning, is when the majority calls the minority and they say their reliance on international law is misguided. I thought the word misguided was a bit harsh by judges against other judges. I do know that often on appeal, judges do make some adverse remarks against each other, but I think this was a bit disturbing. But
Advocate Mannya, yes. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it at that for now, but thank you very much for your insight.